The Commodores, formed in 1968 at Tuskegee University, Alabama, rose to fame in the 1970s with their electrifying blend of funk, soulful harmonies, and powerful performances. With hits like Brick House, Easy, and Three Times a Lady, they became legends. But what happened after the spotlight dimmed? Why did Lionel Richie walk away at the height of their success? And did you know that some of the band's most talented members met tragic and heartbreaking ends? In this video, we'll uncover the hidden truths behind the music, the triumphs, the losses, and the unanswered questions. Which members are still with us today, and what are they doing in 2025? Let's look deeper into their lives and find out. The name Commodores came about purely by chance, a lucky accident that would soon represent one of the greatest soul bands of the late 1970s and early 1980s. But long before they topped the charts, they were simply a group of college friends with a shared dream of making music. Rising from Tuskegee University in Alabama, the Commodores would go on to become Motown legends, delivering massive hits like Brick House, Easy, and Three Times a Lady. The origins of the band trace back to two smaller student groups, the Mystics and the Jays. When these groups came together at Tuskegee, they set the foundation for what would become the Commodores. Among the members of the Mystics were Lionel Richie, Thomas McClary, and William King. But none of it might have happened if fate hadn't stepped in one day, as Thomas McClary stood waiting in line at registration. As the story goes, Thomas heard someone behind him whistling a jazz tune by Eddie Harris. Curious, he turned around and asked the young man, "Are you a musician?" The student, who turned out to be Lionel Richie, shyly answered, "No, not really." Thomas explained that he was putting together a band for the freshman talent show and was looking for musicians. Lionel mentioned that he lived nearby and could gather some friends for an audition at his grandmother's house across the street. Thomas later recalled how struck he was by Lionel's humble, almost innocent nature. They were both just freshmen, and Thomas admitted that part of his motivation for starting a band was to meet girls. When he arrived at Lionel's grandmother's house, he got a surprise. Lionel came down the stairs playing a saxophone. Thomas couldn't help but laugh and said, "I thought you said you weren't a musician." Lionel replied modestly, "I play a little bit." In that moment, Thomas knew he had found the perfect addition to his band. The group had lost their original lead singer, who had been drafted to the Vietnam War, and they needed a new voice. Thomas encouraged Lionel, telling him, "Hey man, you sound great." Lionel, not realizing his own talent, was hesitant, but Thomas reassured him. Together, they performed at the talent show and, to their surprise, won. Without their own equipment, they borrowed instruments from another campus band, the Jays. When some members of the Jays graduated, Thomas and his friends merged with the remaining members. The Jays needed fresh faces, and the Mystics needed equipment. The rest, as they say, is history. The Jays brought fresh talent to the mix, with members like Andre Callahan, Michael Gilbert, and Milan Williams. When these 6 gifted students, blending the Mystics and the Jays, came together, they knew it was time for a new name to reflect their united vision. That name came about in the most unexpected way. William King, searching for inspiration, opened a dictionary, ran his finger down the page, and landed on the word Commodore. He laughed, later saying how lucky they were, because with just a little less fortune, they could have ended up calling themselves something far less appealing like the Commodes. Determined to break into the music industry, the group worked tirelessly, chasing a dream that seemed just out of reach. "We were one of the defining sounds of funk," Thomas McClary would later reflect. "We wanted to set a new trajectory for music." In those early days, that dream drove them to pile into a van and make overnight drives to New York City, hoping for just one chance to perform. But first, they had to convince Lionel Richie's grandmother to let him join the journey. Lionel had been set to work at a bomb factory in Joliet, Illinois, a steady job that eased his grandmother's mind. Understandably, she worried about the risks of life on the road. The band members promised her they'd stay away from drugs and alcohol, determined to prove they could handle themselves. After playing a few small gigs, they scraped together just enough money to make the trip. But the road wasn't kind to them. Somewhere on the New Jersey Turnpike, they ran out of cash. When they reached the toll booth, they didn't have the $4.50 they needed to get through. The toll collector took one look at the packed, worn-down van and said, "I believe you, because if you had money, you would have rented a U-Haul." When they finally made it to New York, their luck didn't improve. Hoping to trade work for a place to sleep, they went to the YMCA. But when they returned to the street, their hearts sank. Their precious music equipment had been stolen. Desperate and with nothing left, they found their way to Small's Paradise, a famous Harlem venue where big bands often played. A man there offered to help recover their equipment, for a price. But they didn't even have the $50 he asked for. Then, fate intervened. That man, Benny Ashburn, decided to take a chance on them. He loaned them the money and set up an audition at Small's. When the Commodores hit the stage, they gave the performance of their lives. Dancing and playing at the same time, they delivered a show the audience hadn't seen before. The energy, the sound, the chemistry, it all came together that night. At Small's Paradise in Harlem, the Commodores didn't just win over the crowd, they caught their first big break. It was there that Benny Ashburn saw something special in the group. Impressed by their talent and energy, Benny became their manager and opened the door to the opportunities they'd been chasing. Benny had a longtime friend in the industry, Susan DePass. Susan was someone Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, trusted deeply. Gordy had brought her on board to help discover and develop new talent, and Susan already had a proven track record in the music business. One of Susan's first major projects at Motown was working with a young rising group called the Jackson 5. Fresh off an appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, the Jackson 5 were quickly becoming a sensation. As their fame grew, they needed a strong opening act for their tour. Susan saw the Commodores perform and knew they were the perfect fit. Their dynamic stage presence and infectious sound made them ideal to open for the Jackson 5. The Commodores got the opportunity to tour with the group for 2 years. Night after night, they took the stage before packed crowds, gaining fans and proving that they belonged among Motown's finest. By the end of the tour, Berry Gordy himself was convinced. He signed the Commodores to their first recording contract with Motown, officially launching what would become a hugely successful career. Their rise was swift. The Commodores started turning heads with their instrumental hit Machine Gun. The energetic, funk-fueled tune became a favorite at sports events and found its way into films like Boogie Nights and Looking for Mr. Goodbar. It climbed to number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100. Their next standout track, I Feel Sanctified, blended funk with infectious grooves and went on to inspire future artists, including Wild Cherry, who took the style to new heights with Play That Funky Music. The Commodores even made their mark on the big screen. In the 1978 film Thank God It's Friday, they lit up the stage with Too Hot to Trot during a lively dance contest. The movie also featured 2 of their biggest hits, Brick House and Easy. Why did Lionel Richie leave the Commodores? The departure of Lionel Richie from the Commodores wasn't as simple or as clear-cut as many might think. In later interviews, Lionel himself reflected on that period, saying he never really intended to leave the group for good. "I didn't have that plan," he admitted. "People thought I was saying, okay, I'm Lionel Richie now, I'm ready to go on my own." But that wasn't how it felt at the time. At the height of their success, the Commodores decided to take a break from recording and touring. Just a short pause to regroup and recharge. During that downtime, Motown encouraged Lionel to explore the idea of a solo album. He gave it a try, and what followed was more than anyone expected. His solo work, beginning with massive hits like Endless Love and All Night Long, turned Lionel Richie into a global superstar. With that level of success, it became harder and harder for him to return to the band. But not everyone in the Commodores saw it as an innocent turn of events. William King, one of the band's founding members, shared his frustration in a 1985 interview. For King, it wasn't just that Ritchie left, it was how he left that stung. According to King, Ritchie kept assuring the band that he'd come back. First, after working with Kenny Rogers. Then, after collaborating with Diana Ross. And finally, after finishing his solo album. Each time, the band waited. The waiting took its toll. Promoters were hesitant to book the Commodores without Ritchie, and the group struggled to move forward while caught in limbo. King summed it up with a powerful comparison. Would they have booked the Beatles without Paul McCartney? For the Commodores, Lionel wasn't just their lead singer, he was their McCartney, a vital part of their sound, their image, and their magic. Instead of making a clean break or being upfront with the band about his decision, Lionel Richie unintentionally left the Commodores in a difficult position. He didn't tell them outright that he wasn't coming back, and as a result, the group was left waiting, hoping he'd return. Eventually, the Commodores had no choice but to move on without him, but the experience left a lasting scar. From Ritchie's perspective, it wasn't meant to happen that way. In later interviews, he shared that he never intended to leave the group hanging. He truly believed he would go back. But as he became more involved in solo projects, he discovered a freedom he hadn't felt before. The freedom to explore his own style without being tied to a group. That independence was hard to give up, and returning became more difficult with time. Still, for William King, the long period of waiting and the uncertainty Lionel left behind were hard to forgive. The split also sparked lingering tensions among the band members. In later years, when asked if he would like to reunite the Commodores, King didn't hesitate. "Oh gosh, yes. I've been trying to make it happen for 30 years, he said. King reflected on just how much losing Ritchie changed the group's fate. In the beginning, they thought they'd be fine without him. After all, the Commodores had always been a band where everyone contributed to the sound and the success. But to the public, Ritchie seemed like the heart and soul of the group. Fans assumed he was the one behind the songwriting, the arrangements, the production, everything. The truth was that while Lionel had written many of their hits, the rest of the band had played crucial roles too. When Ritchie left, the Commodores quickly realized that a large part of their audience only wanted the band if Ritchie was part of it. The loss hit them hard, not just emotionally, but in terms of popularity and financial success as well. Feuds with the band members for 40 years. Thomas McClary, one of the founding members of the Commodores, had his own perspective on the tensions that lingered within the group over the years. Reflecting on the feud, he spoke openly about how dangerous jealousy can be. McClary never hesitated to praise Lionel Richie, recognizing his former bandmate's gift. "Lionel is very talented," he said. "He has a great voice and is a wonderful writer." In McClary's view, it didn't matter if some members found it hard to acknowledge Lionel's contributions, but McClary didn't shy away from pointing out where he felt the real issues lay. He described William King as a stumbling block for the group's progress. "William is probably the least talented one of us all, and he's been the main stumbling block," McClary admitted. He also believed that Walter Orange, another key member, made things harder by siding too often with King, adding to the internal challenges. Despite the frustrations, McClary remained hopeful. When asked whether he'd like to see the Commodores reunited, his answer came without hesitation. "Yes, I would love it." He spoke passionately about how he had spent nearly 30 years trying to make it happen. One of his fondest memories came from 2008, when Lionel invited him and Ronald LaPred to join him on stage in New Zealand. The response was overwhelming. The fans loved it. In fact, Lionel, Ronald, and I performed together in New Zealand recently, and we did a show in New Orleans. 65,000 people showed up. There's clearly an appetite for the reunion. McClary also shared that in 2009, Lionel tried to bring everyone back together for a performance at the Essence Music Festival in New Orleans. But despite their efforts, the old wounds were still too deep. The bitterness among some of the other members was simply too strong, and incredibly, some hadn't spoken to Lionel in 40 years. McClary's frustration was clear as he reflected on it all. "Come on, you've forgotten what you're even mad about," he said, holding on to the hope that one day they might all find their way back to the same stage. Thomas McClary left the band. Things had reached a breaking point. After Lionel Richie's departure from the Commodores, the dynamic within the band shifted in ways that were hard to recover from. Lionel was replaced by Skylar Jett, who stepped in as co-lead singer, bringing his own voice to the group. But not long after, another founding member, Thomas McClary, chose to walk away as well. McClary had dreams beyond the Commodores. He wanted to start a solo career and pursue his passion for gospel music by creating his own company. In a later interview, McClary reflected on the reasons behind his decision, as well as Lionel's. He spoke candidly about how things had started to change within the band. He noticed that some of the members no longer shared the same excitement for the music. Other distractions began to pull their focus, and for McClary, that was a red flag. He felt a responsibility to help keep the group strong, but the energy just wasn't the same anymore. McClary also opened up about one of the hardest moments during that time, the loss of Benny Ashburn, their longtime manager and a pillar of support for the band. Benny's passing deeply affected everyone. McClary described the feeling as bittersweet. The band was still winning in terms of success, but some members weren't giving it their all. He compared it to being on a sports team, where even if you're not the one scoring, you want the team to win. Even after leaving the Commodores, McClary stayed connected to music and to Lionel. The two continued to collaborate, writing songs for major artists like Kenny Rogers and Diana Ross. Together, they worked on tracks including one for the iconic film Endless Love. McClary wanted people to see that, despite everything, they were still creating meaningful work, even if not everyone saw it that way. After McClary's departure, the band brought in guitarist and vocalist Sheldon Reynolds. Reynolds injected fresh energy into the Commodores, but his time with the group was brief. Before long, Sheldon left to join the legendary Earth, Wind and Fire. This left the Commodores without a guitarist, and, in an unexpected twist, William W. King, known for his skills as a trumpeter, stepped up to handle guitar duties during their live shows. The plane crash incident. A few years after Lionel and Thomas McClary left, the Commodores faced the loss of yet another key member. Milan Williams, the band's talented keyboardist, had been part of their signature sound from the beginning. But before Milan stepped away from the group, he lived through a terrifying ordeal. While piloting a single-engine plane in Phoenix, Arizona, something went terribly wrong. Forced to make an emergency landing, Milan brought the plane down on a busy freeway, a situation that could have ended in disaster. Miraculously, both Milan and the band's press agent, who was traveling with him, walked away without injuries. The plane, however, burst into flames and was completely destroyed. It was a close call that could have taken 2 lives, but luck was on their side that day. Later on, Milan made the difficult decision to leave the Commodores. His choice wasn't just about music, it was about principle. During the apartheid era, when South Africa was gripped by brutal racial segregation, Milan refused to perform there. He stood firm in his beliefs, unwilling to lend his talents to a system built on injustice. But his stance created tension within the band, and in the end, his departure marked the official end of the original lineup that had brought the Commodores so much success. After Milan left, the band began shifting its sound, moving away from the gritty, funky style that had made them famous. It was a challenging period as they struggled to find a new identity without one of their key creative forces. Sadly, Milan's story took a heartbreaking turn. In the years following his departure from the Commodores, he was diagnosed with leukemia. He fought the disease with determination, but after 2 years of battling the illness, Milan passed away in 2006. His death was a devastating loss, not just for his bandmates, but for the fans who had grown up with his music. Milan wasn't just a gifted musician, he was a vital part of the Commodores' history and heart. The challenges didn't end there. Around the same time, Ronald Lapred, the band's bassist, also left the group and moved to New Zealand. He faced his own struggles as he adjusted to life beyond the Commodores. With Milan gone and other members stepping away, the band found it harder and harder to hold on to the spirit that had once defined them. Financial and legal disputes. Like many bands with a long and storied history, the Commodores eventually found themselves facing serious financial and legal battles within their ranks. Over time, as the original members went their separate ways and pursued different paths, it became harder and harder for the group to reunite without friction. At the heart of these disputes was one key issue: the rights to the band's name and how the profits from their music should be shared. The tension reached a boiling point in 2013 when Thomas McClary, one of the founding members, began using the name The Commodores to promote his own band. Meanwhile, William King and Walter Orange continued performing as the Commodores with new musicians. The situation caused confusion among fans, many of whom didn't know which group was the official one. That confusion eventually led to legal action, kicking off a long and complicated court battle between McClary and his former bandmates. In 2018, a court in Florida finally ruled on the matter. The decision favored the remaining members, King, Orange, and their company, which had continued performing as the Commodores. The court based its ruling on two main points. First, it found that the members who kept the band going had what's called common law trademark rights to the name, because they were the ones actively using it in the music world. Second, the court pointed to agreements the band had made over the years. Those agreements showed that the rights to the name were shared among all the members, but none of them had the right to use the name alone if they left the group. The court's decision meant that the members who stayed with the band had the exclusive right to perform and promote themselves as the Commodores. McClary could still identify himself as an original member of the group, but he wasn't allowed to use the band's name to promote his own shows or recordings. So names like the Commodores featuring Thomas McClary or the 2014 Commodores were off limits, as they could easily mislead fans about which group they were seeing. Changing sounds and industry challenges. As the years went on, the Commodores' music began to evolve. The funky, hard-hitting sound that had defined them in the 1970s gradually gave way to a more polished, commercial pop style. In 1984, they brought in James Dean J.D. Nicholas as a co-lead singer, sharing vocal duties with Walter Clyde Orange, who was also the band's drummer. The lineup change marked a new chapter for the group as they searched for a fresh direction. For a while, big hits proved elusive, but in 1985, their persistence paid off with Night Shift, their final album under Motown Records. The title track, Night Shift, was a heartfelt tribute to two music legends, Marvin Gaye and Jackie Wilson, who had both passed away the year before. The song struck a chord with listeners, climbing to number 3 on the U.S. charts and earning the Commodores a Grammy for Best R&B Performance by a duo or group with vocals. Yet the band's shift in style was a mixed blessing. While Night Shift brought them success, not all fans were on board with the new sound. Many longed for the gritty, lively funk that had made the Commodores famous. The smoother, pop-oriented approach left some unsure and a bit nostalgic for the band's earlier days. But this transformation wasn't just about artistic choice. The music industry itself was changing rapidly in the 1980s and 90s. New technologies, new ways of listening, and the rise of digital formats were reshaping everything. Record labels were pressuring groups like the Commodores to broaden their appeal, to chase trends, and to deliver music that could sell in a fast-moving market. For the Commodores, this meant walking a difficult line, trying to hold on to the fans who had been with them from the beginning, while also reaching new listeners who were curious about their evolving sound. It was a tough balancing act. Some longtime fans felt left behind, unsure of the band's new direction. Meanwhile, younger audiences were only just discovering the group, intrigued by the fresh style, but unaware of the rich musical legacy behind it. Legacy in recent times. In recent years, the Commodores have found meaningful ways to honor their legacy while continuing to inspire audiences around the world. In 2010, they revisited one of their most beloved songs, Night Shift, re-recording it as a tribute to Michael Jackson following his death in 2009. The idea took root during a powerful moment on tour. On June 25, 2009, while performing at Wembley Arena in London, the band learned of Jackson's passing. At first, they thought it had to be a rumor. But once the news was confirmed backstage, the group was deeply shaken by the loss of such an iconic figure. The very next night, during their show in Birmingham, lead singer J.D. Nicholas made a spontaneous and heartfelt gesture. He added Michael Jackson's name into the lyrics of Night Shift as a tribute. From that point on, they began honoring not only Jackson, but other legendary R&B artists who had passed, weaving their names into the song's legacy. That moving experience inspired the Commodores to officially re-record Night Shift with updated lyrics in honor of Jackson on the first anniversary of his death. Throughout their journey, the Commodores have drawn inspiration from a wide range of legendary artists: Santana, Jimi Hendrix, Albert King, James Taylor, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Despite their different musical styles, these artists shared a soulful spirit that the Commodores aimed to channel. The group sought to blend those influences into a raw, authentic sound that would resonate with listeners across generations. Their creative efforts paid off. The Commodores went on to sell more than 70 million albums worldwide, a testament to their universal appeal. Known for their smooth melodies and catchy, unforgettable tunes, the Commodores have left a lasting mark on music. They've earned the respect of their peers, with inductions into both the Alabama Music Hall of Fame and the Vocal Group Hall of Fame. Their 9 Grammy nominations and Grammy wins stand as further recognition of their contributions to the industry. Even after all these years, the Commodores have remained active on the global stage. As of 2020, the band continued to feature 3 key members: Walter Clyde Orange, J.D. Nicholas, and William W. King, backed by their 5-piece ensemble, the Mean Machine. Together, they bring their timeless sound to arenas, theaters, and festivals, keeping their music alive for both longtime fans and new generations. Through all the ups and downs, the Commodores' dedication endures. They continue not only to perform, but to honor the musical legends who inspired them along the way. The Commodores' members who have sadly died. Over the decades, the Commodores have not only gifted the world timeless music, but they've also faced heartbreaking losses within their ranks. 2 members in particular left a lasting impact before their passing: Milan Williams and Sheldon Reynolds. Milan Williams, born on March 28, 1948 in Okolona, Mississippi, was a founding member of the Commodores and the keyboardist who helped define their signature sound. Known for blending funk, R&B, and soul with intricate arrangements, Milan was instrumental in creating classics like Brick House. His musical genius shaped the identity of the band during their most successful years. After leaving the Commodores in 1989, Milan continued his work in music. But in 2006, at the age of 58, he tragically lost his battle with leukemia. Sheldon Reynolds joined the Commodores during a transitional period in 1984, bringing fresh energy as a guitarist, vocalist, and songwriter. Born on November 27, 1953 in Chicago, Reynolds was already an accomplished musician, having played with Earth, Wind, and Fire. With the Commodores, his soulful style and versatile talent elevated songs like Night Shift, a Grammy-winning tribute to Marvin Gaye and Jackie Wilson. After leaving in 1993, Sheldon continued to inspire through solo work and philanthropy. He passed away on December 3, 2020. Members who are still alive. As of June 2025, several key members of the Commodores, the band that defined an era of funk, soul, and unforgettable melodies, are still alive, each continuing to leave their mark on music and culture. Lionel Richie, age 75, born June 20, 1949, was the band's lead vocalist and one of its founding members. With his smooth voice and brilliant songwriting, Lionel helped propel the Commodores to international fame before leaving in 1982 to pursue a solo career. Today, he remains a global music icon, beloved for hits like Hello and All Night Long. Walter Clyde Orange, age 77, born December 9, 1947, served as the Commodores' drummer and vocalist. His powerful voice became a defining feature of the group's sound after Richie's departure. Clyde remains an active force in keeping the Commodores' legacy alive, still performing with the band. Thomas McClary, age 75, born October 6, 1949, was the band's rhythm guitarist and co-writer of several major hits. After leaving in 1984, McClary pursued a solo career and gospel projects. He remains celebrated for his role in shaping the group's signature sound. William "Willie" King, age 75, born January 30, 1950, brought vibrancy to the band with his trumpet and flugelhorn, as well as his dynamic stage presence. He continues to represent the Commodore's enduring spirit. James Dean J.D. Nicholas, age 73, born April 11, 1952, joined in the late 70s and contributed vocals and guitar, adding fresh energy that enriched their sound. Skylar Jett, age 69, born August 1, 1955, lent his soulful voice to the band in the mid-1880s, playing a key role in their evolving style. Ronald LaPred, age 74, born September 5, 1950, was the bassist whose groovy lines helped define the band's funk rhythm. Though he left the Commodores and settled in New Zealand, his contributions remain unforgettable. And there you have it. Who was your favorite artist from the Commodores? Comment down below to let us know. See you on the next video. Bye-bye.